Today we have Domingo Valadez, the mastermind behind Homebase, a revolutionary investor management software transforming real estate syndication. From his experience at Google, where he honed his skills in innovation and collaboration, Domingo learned valuable lessons that he now applies to help real estate operators streamline funding and connect with investors. If you're ready to think your investor management strategies and explore cutting-edge solutions, this episode is for you. Let's dive in.
Yeah. So I'd say what Google does really well at is really smart people work there. And so you get to work with folks that are consistently challenging the status quo.
Mhm.
And so as someone just graduating from school, you don't really know what work looks like. You're still thinking college campus. And so Google actually did a really good job of making the transition feel very smooth because their offices felt like a college campus a lot.
Mhm.
It was just a lot of people very passionate about what they were working on. And so for me, that provided a lot of mentorship. So like when I quit Google and started my own company, my director, my old skip level manager, multiple people actually invested in our company to showcase that they believed in me. But I also got to learn a lot through them, just their work ethic. A lot of them were ex-consultants. So they were very much into putting together presentations, looking at different aspects of the business and understanding, is there a way we can either optimize revenue or bring down costs in different capacities? A lot of competitive strategy we looked at. So how is Facebook, Amazon doing certain things? How does that affect Google's revenue model? What can we do internally to improve our products? And so translated a lot of those learnings into now building Homebase. So understanding how to build beautiful product experiences for people that we work with, understanding what the competitive landscape looks like to understand how do you differentiate yourself,
Mhm.
and then also bringing in some of the structure as to daily stand-up. What do you want to happen when you're talking about with your other co-founders? What are going to be the main points that you're going to bring up in stand-up? How do you run different sprints on a 2-week basis and have goals in mind that you want to hit? So a lot of that structure is really helpful and made some great mentors and friends along the way.
Mhm. Yeah. So, are you using like a Scrum type philosophy then to deploy your improvements to the software at this point?
We do.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. I'm curious, like from the inside. So, I never worked for Amazon or anything, but I was a consultant, and I've participated in a couple of these where I'm not sure if you've heard of this or not, but whenever they have a meeting, they have to write papers. Whoever's calling the meeting has to write a paper on it. And basically, they all walk into this meeting, and rather than having the normal chit chat where everybody's being brought up to speed with whatever the thing is that the meeting is supposed to be about, everyone sits down and takes 10 or 15 minutes to read this paper that this person put together. And these papers are long. These things, it is like a research paper, and they share these things back and forth, these people that are on the same teams, and they really make a good presentation in order to be able to bring everybody up to speed as quickly as possible so that everybody's on the same level without all of the chit chat and everything. So I'm just curious, is there anything like that Google does that is something similar that you're aware of?
So I think that was very unique to Amazon. This girl on my
Mhm.
team came from Amazon and she shared that structure. I'd say for Google, it was a lot more like in my role there at the time, it was very cross-functional. So we worked a lot with different engineers, different product managers, salespeople. And so a lot of times you're putting together, like if there was a project you wanted to move forward, you'd put together a Word doc that would describe the goals of the project that you're doing, how you're certain milestones you're trying to hit, what some of the outcomes that you expect should be, and then teams that you're planning to work with and how they get involved in different capacities. So in order to even get started, sometimes on some of these projects, you would have to get some level of director buy-in.
Mhm.
And so that included a lot of different one-on-ones with folks because you're effectively trying. Google's a lot less structured than Amazon, I'd say. And so projects would literally come out of you running into someone in the hallway as you're both getting coffee. And then you're both talking about, hey, I'm working on this thing for this product, running into this issue. They say, oh my gosh, so is my team. Should we brainstorm to see if there's a way we can make this better? And then you would then hop in a room, you start brainstorming around that. Then all of a sudden, projects come out of that. And so now you have to understand, okay, we're trying to do X thing for Y outcome, and we're probably gonna have to get these teams involved. Let's now actually reach out to those teams get their buy-in, and see if any of them want to work with us to actually bring this project to life and
Yeah.
actually make these changes.
So I am. We'll get to the other software here in a second, but I'm just curious again. Obviously, Google's one of those huge companies, and it's always good learning from these types of companies and whatnot. So I'm trying to picture how this all comes together. Where to me, I think of Google and I think of Gmail or I think of search or something like that, and obviously, I don't even know how many people work for Google. A shit ton of people works for Google, right? How is it that you are able to, I guess everybody's working on these different projects and then this sort of marrying of ideas comes together and then it shoots off into this other thing. I'm curious how I just find it so fascinating that can pollinate that idea can pollinate out and it spreads like that where things just pop up. I'm curious how if is there like a culture where people are always asking like, "Oh, what are you working on? What are you working on?" I'm just curious how that type of a conversation can happen because I feel like in other industries, other businesses, everything is very siloed and people have their blinders on and not really expressing like I'm doing this, I'm working on that. Like it seems like it's a much more communicative type culture there. And I'm not even quite sure what the question is here, but I'm just curious from your perspective, was there anything that comes to mind like this was different working in this type of an environment that really brought everybody together like they did this or this was the mindset that was instilled in you? Does anything come to mind with that?
Yeah. So I'll say they typically tend to have teams in the same buildings that are working on similar products.
Mm,
So like the Gmail team will all be in one building, or they're a huge team. So they're I'm sure in multiple buildings, but it's like mostly Gmail people and they'll have a handful of other like functions there as well. So
mhm,
I'd say like for the conversations that come out when we had these discussions, I was part of the small to medium business ads organization. And so they put a lot of the central roles, and that has to do with sales strategy, product strategy, operations. Like they put a lot of those people in the same building.
mhm,
And so like we weren't actually the ones like selling the product. It was mostly internal like facing. So it was like, okay, how can we, make our sales teams to be more optimized? How can we improve our products in the ads function more generally? And so that's where conversations you run into the director of an ad product that they're supporting and you run into him, they're telling you like X things broken. And you're like, oh, actually, we just had something very similar happen in the search function. And here's what happened there. And then that's where maybe you begin to work together. So things are still incredibly siloed. Like even though a project spring from that, there could be another team also working on the exact same project. So you actually have now two different groups of people working on the exact same thing. And of course, only one of them is going to make it into production. So then like you could do all this work, you get to the finish line, you realize like they accepted the other one. Everything you did internally
mm,
didn't go anywhere. And that was a lot of wasted, like theoretically wasted time and effort. The flip side of that could be like, we saw two proposals. We went with the one that was better. So it's not really wasted time. It's truly which of these is better and more optimized and have a better outcome. So it's really two perspectives at which to look at that. But still things were incredibly siloed. And I'm speaking to the culture that existed pre-COVID. I quit Google like post-COVID right before we went back to office.
mhm.
So I don't know. I know the culture's changed since then and COVID changed it dramatically. So I can't speak to how things are functioning today, but how they used to be functioning. And this is also before they started firing people, and so the morale is pretty high.
Yeah, yeah. And the firing side kind of gets to my next thought here too. As you're going through and you're doing these different projects, and if your project kept failing or the projects that you're involved in kept failing, were those looked at as essentially dings against you, or was that just part of the culture where certain things work and certain things don't work?
Yeah, definitely there are dings against you. So you try really hard for that not to happen. I'd say they would always try to push Googlers to be like riskier with some of the bets they're making,
Yeah.
but it inherently would really hurt you, your performance reviews. So in practice, people would push like very safe changes, which is why like Google gets criticism that like there's not big risks being made by the company. I'd say that's changed as of late with all the AI innovation
Yeah.
happening, and they've been forced by the market to be faster. And so now they're likely rewarding people internally for taking bigger risks
Yep.
because the market's deeming it. But they've made so much money for so long doing very little that risk was not very well rewarded.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's jump into your software and let's start by explaining what it is that Homebase does and who it's for, what the problems are that you saw that you wanted to try to solve.
Absolutely. So we're building investor management software. And the point of that is to really help real estate operators and syndicators manage fundraisers better for deals that they're putting under contract, manage then conversations with investors that invest in those deals, being able to showcase with them like different reporting, different updates, send out and automate distributions to those folks. And then also at the end of the year, help with K1s and make sure that a lot of these are Reg D or security offerings. And so helping them get that structured.
Hmm. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's really what we're building and how we even came to this. So prior to us building software and supporting different operators, we actually started off as syndicators ourselves. And Homebase initially launched as a platform where we wanted to fractionalize residential real estate and let people invest for as little as $100. You can think of that as just like a typical crowdfunding platform like you've seen CrowdStreet. The thesis there was, can we give people the ability to invest without these huge amounts?
Hmm.
We successfully sold 2 properties that way. So both of these were located in South Texas. We had 30 plus investors participate in each of those. And we had checks like as low as $100. So we had some pretty small checks of people participating. And we were able to build an investor base of about 3,000 plus accredited and non-accredited investors in a pretty short period of time. I'd say the reason we pivoted into software is because interest rates went up in a very short period of time. And if you're syndicating deals that small with these high of interest rates, the numbers just become very hard to pencil. And so we realized we went through this entire painful process. We built a lot of software for ourselves to make it easier. And there's a lot of folks that already syndicate deals that are much better at it than we are from an operational perspective. And so we wanted to support those folks to make their lives easier.
Got it. Got it. Okay. With that pivot into the software side of things or into the I guess the syndication larger project side of things, what were some of the initial hurdles that you had to come over? Like you obviously did this on a smaller scale, so you probably understood some of these, but when you're dealing with larger apartment buildings and all of that, there's all kinds of other complexities and problems that pop up. So I'm curious, what were some of those things that you realized that you needed to learn maybe about that process as you were making the shift into the software side of things?
Yeah, it was really just understanding what are the core pain points people solve or deal with as
Mhm.
they're syndicating deals like end to end from like initial finding a property you like to putting it under contract to getting all the third parties involved to then fundraising to then closing to then managing and operating, truly understanding end to end what that flow looks like. And we, as you mentioned, we've done this at a smaller scale. Of course, as it gets bigger, it gets inherently more complex. Financing can be more complex. There's a lot more investors that are participating. Reporting probably needs to be more robust. And so for us, the way we learned that was just scheduling like hundreds of calls with different operators. And we've been able to do that through a lot of experiments we've run for like growth hacks. So even I think the way we met, I think I scheduled time with you. We hopped on a call. I try to be very transparent. I'm like, not trying to sell anything, just trying to learn, like really appreciate the time. And you'd be surprised how many people take the call. You would think a lot of people would be like, no. And I'd
Mhm.
say it's because real estate in general, so relationship based. And so people are always like, maybe there's an opportunity here to meet with this person, learn from them. And I try to provide value where I can. We've met a lot of operators now. I've started to intro people with each other. Some of those people have then gone on and co-GP on deals together, which has been like incredibly rewarding to see, even though like we just entered the space and have learned a lot about it. So that's really how we came across a lot of these problems and then built our software to fit those needs.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive into that process a little bit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with lean customer development. Great book on kind of this process where uh, you're pulling out the problems that people are struggling with, but you're trying to do it in a way where you're not introducing any type of bias into the conversation. I'm curious what your process was to get that honest feedback. Was it just a very open conversation, just like what you said, like how you and I met, where you're just running through this cadence or these questions and people are answering them? Or was there more methodical thought put behind how you're going to enter into these conversations to, again, not introduce any type of bias? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the benefit that we have entering a market where there's a lot of players already is there's a problem here. It's a matter of, can you figure out if there's a niche that's currently not being met or like untapped?
Mm.
And are there certain problems that a lot of people have that current solutions still aren't fully solving? And to me, there was an opportunity because there's so many players in the space. That to me is a sign that no one's actually fully solved the problem or good enough that they just have 90% market share. Because you would think though, if a solution is really that good, and given real estate's so networking based and you want to tell everyone like what solutions you're using, someone would have majority market share. And the fact that's not the case told me like no one's fully solved it. And so when we went into these conversations, I don't know if you've read the book, The Mom Test. That's very much like
Mm.
you having customer discovery calls and understanding like, how do you actually solve people? Like, how do you learn more about the problems people have without you pushing a solution into their face?
Yep.
Because ultimately, people don't care about what you're building. They care about their problem being solved.
Yep.
And so a lot of these conversations, like we didn't have a set agenda. We just had some hypotheses and we were trying to say, okay, based on where the conversation's going, did we answer some of these hypotheses that we had as to what people are looking for in the market? And so that to us is very telling. And even the way we've been building Homebase, we very much have built, I'd say, the minimum features required in order to support an end-to-end deal to happen.
Hmm.
And because we've done that, we can actually offer some of the lowest fees in market. Like our thesis is we think software is going to get incredibly commoditized, especially with how fast we can build products now with AI tools. And so because of that, you actually have to offer a lot more value than just software, which is why we're focusing on building community and like connecting people with each other. We want to start partnering with different lenders. Everyone needs debt. Can we give people like the opportunity to connect with those folks through our networks and then charge a pretty nominal fee for the software as we scale and grow the business? So that's how we're thinking about Homebase and like understanding what to build based on what customers are asking for.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. There's so much to dive into there. Curious when you started doing these customer interviews, and I'm sure that they were probably all over the board. Probably whatever the hot button issue was that this person just ran into, that's what they're going to complain about, and this is the biggest thing top of mind, right? So as you're laying out your software path, you have all of these things that people are complaining about, and this particular complaint came up 20 times, and this one came up 5 times, whatever it is, right? How did you go about determining how to build the software in a way that doesn't introduce scope creep, where now you're running out into all different areas so that you can present something that is valuable, usable to the customers? So how did you arrive at the MVP that you were going to put in front of people without blowing the brain, without blowing the bank, and without, again, just getting crazy with all of these different requests and all of that? I'm curious how your thought process worked going through that and establishing these are the first things that we're going to build here.
Yeah. So for us, it really came down to what is the core flow for syndicators? Because going back to, because there's already players in the market,
Hmm.
we can actually see what their features are and like see what the similarities are between all these different platforms. And so to understand, okay, for example, having the ability to showcase a deal room, that's a must have feature because everyone needs to be able to showcase that. Being able to accept payments, that's a must have. Having an LP portal, that's a must have. And so that was very helpful. But you find out that people actually don't care. For example, every platform, let's just say we have a CRM. And then you ask sponsors, are you using the CRM of the portal that you're paying for? And most people say no. They say they have an existing CRM. They've never used it. They plan to use it, And so you now know that company put all this time and effort building out this really intense feature set, and very few people are using it. And why would they? How are you going to be better than like a HubSpot that literally their whole product is being a CRM?
Hmm.
And so it's really understanding, okay, what are the core features that we need to support these deals? How do we do it in a way that makes it as easy as possible for LPs to onboard? Because if you talk to these folks, the first thing they say is, I want my LPs to have a great experience. Like that's what I'm optimizing for. And so when we do demos, for example, like that's what I'm focusing on. Look at the experience. Look how easy it is for them. Look how quickly they can invest. And then that tends to resonate. And when we were first building, we actually first just put together Figma mockups of, okay, based on everything we've learned, here is like just a mockup of what we theoretically could build. If we had this today, would you pay for it? And some of these people said yes. So then we got LOI signed saying like, okay, we're going to build this. Give us 2.5 months. And when we do build it, you'll be one of our first customers. And so we actually got some customers that way that went the entire way with us from like first conception to like signing on with us. We actually had people that switched from other platforms because they liked the experience that we had, even though we have nowhere near as many features as some of these other platforms do. But it was we really nailed down the core set of features people need,
Hmm.
doing it at a pretty low price point because we don't have a huge sales team that we need to support, have all these different features and engineers that we've had a need to build everything, and have made the customer feel like they've been part of the build journey along the way as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'm curious if, like you said, the CRM is a perfect example. There's all of these other companies out there that they are a CRM system. Is the CRM part of your roadmap? It might not be the first thing that you're doing, but I'm just curious, do you still have plans to be able to venture into those other markets when the time is right? Or is that not, maybe it's there, it's just not necessarily established whether or not you'll ultimately end up doing that or not?
Yeah. So funny enough, I used to think that was going to be one of our core differentiators, being able to like
Mhm.
natively integrate with different CRM products and have our own. I've since changed my stance on that just because I found that most people actually don't use it in any of these platforms. And when like everyone theoretically wants to use it, the thing is everyone already has set workflows that how they function.
Mhm.
And so changing like habits is very challenging. And so if your core product is not changing habits, it's going to be like very hard to do that as like a sub feature within a product. And so that to us is like, okay, let's not go down this path. We came in with the hypothesis that was going to be a core differentiator, but after all these calls, realized it's not the path forward.
Yeah, interesting. And do you feel, I'm curious what your, obviously you answered this, but I guess I'm still wondering, like to me, and I'll just say that I think that you thought that we were one of the more advanced operators out there. To me, like a CRM offers so much automation. It takes care of so much of the follow up and all of the repetitive tasks that the team are doing and all of that. So to me, if this was my software, I think I would talk myself into the CRM being a good thing for these people once they actually understand all of the all of the benefits of actually doing it. And again, I get it. A lot of people don't understand how that all works, but I'm just curious. Do you feel like there's an argument to be made there where you could ultimately end up going down that path again once people understand, yeah, I don't want to keep calling these people, or I can use AI to be able to, start ask or answering some of these repetitive questions. And then that's all tracked by this or in this person's particular profile. So I'm just curious your thoughts on, as as people adopt these new ways of doing things, and that might take years, potentially, is there a possibility where you would change that tune again and think, okay, yeah, maybe now is the right time? I'm just curious your thoughts there.
Yeah. So we're always like changing perspectives based on customer feedback. So this is a hypothesis now that we disproven, but that could absolutely change as customer demands change. So always open to changing our roadmaps based off if there's enough voices in the room asking for certain features to be built.
Hmm.
On the CRM side, I'd say like most folks that use any sort of system just already have it in place. And for folks that don't, they just want the ability to send like emails or like updates which we do have within Homebase. So people can
Mhm.
share like investor updates. It's just more so like tracking all your prior email histories, being able to put in tags and like really move people around. Like that has not looked the best in like some of our competitors' flows. And so, and how would they like compare to HubSpot? That HubSpot can be very cheap if you use it for like very small feature sets, or if you're not using it like insanely robustly.
Mhm.
And so competing with a product like that, especially as a startup, it's going to be just very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. What would you say is the kind of the product roadmap for you? What are some of the things that you are excited about that are going to be coming? Maybe people are asking for it. Can you talk about some of those things that might be coming with the software?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, like we automate distributions for folks. So we've been doing that manually, but we want to release like a tool that lets people play around with different waterfalls and then decide how much they should send out to every single investor based on their promote structure. That's one feature we're excited by. Another one's helping with K1s. We've just heard that's such a pain point. No one's
Yeah.
really fully solved it. And so really looking into, can that be our differentiator? And can we make that process much better for folks? And maybe that's having just like a Rolodex of different CPAs that we work with that we can connect different operators with, automating a lot. So at a certain point, we like to integrate with QuickBooks. And so if we have a lot of the information tied to your distributions, if we know exactly who's invested in what amounts and what shares they have, theoretically, all the K1 is saying how much an investor's gotten in distributions based on their equity. And you can actually automate a lot of that structure. And so we'd love to have that as a feature for folks, like automating K1s at the end of the year. It hasn't been a priority right now just because like tax season's not here yet.
Mhm.
And building that much in the future is tough when we have all these other things to be building, but definitely something top of mind for us as well. And I'd say like very long-term vision. So these are more like midterm vision. I'd say long-term, like what we'd love to do at Homebase. Once we get to 1 billion in assets under management on the platform, I'd say at that point we'd have a lot of sponsors. We'd love to launch like a REIT, a private REIT that would invest in some of the top performing syndicators
Mm-hmm.
in some of their deals. And the benefit of that would be it could act as liquidity for folks that invest in some of those pretty illiquid deals. Because syndication is very similar to like venture capital, 5 to 7 year hold periods, like typically. And so
Yep.
you get very little liquidity on those investments outside of distributions. But even then, sometimes those get cut off when there's any sort of capital calls that need to be made. And so
Yep.
giving people the ability to sell out early and then letting new investors come in once an asset's been stabilized, that's very attractive, especially for syndicators. So we'll love to be able to offer that down the line as like a differentiator for Homebase as well. Um, so really just thinking through what are some of the core problems people have and how can we solve it? Creative means at Homebase.
Yeah, that is interesting. Talk a little bit about the K1 problem, right? I'll say that from our perspective, it's always such a pain in the butt to get all of the material over to the accountant and the accountant's swamped. They're being hounded from every single angle from everybody just like myself trying to get their K1s done by the certain time. And you obviously have to have all of your financials done and into them by a certain time of the year. And in order for them to even have a chance to be able to get you back your K1s in time. So what types of things are you looking at to be able to make that a more pleasing experience or easier experience for the operator?
Yeah. So it'll be just like if you give us all your distribution data, like when we have an integration with QuickBooks, and even without it, like if you share with us your balance sheet and we can just upload it at Homebase and see what's happening there, like using AI to pull all the critical information
Mm,
and then just proportioning it out to every single investor who's part of their deal. And then you can understand how much people have gotten in terms of distributions, their equity stakes, and then pre-filling out a lot of these forms. Of course, we're not going to do filings on behalf of folks. So what we're just trying to do is cut down on the amount of work that the accountant needs to do.
mhm.
So then like they just send it to the accountant, to the CPA. In my ideal world, we already have a network of CPAs within Homebase that we can recommend. And that's like deal flow for them as well. And it just makes it a lot easier for the accountant then to work with any of these people and then get their K1s done faster.
Yeah. 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 That's good. That's interesting. Who is Homebase really made for? What level operator? Are we talking about 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, a billion? Does it matter? Assets under management? Is there a size limit to it? Who is the ideal target, would you say?
Yeah. So I'd say right now, anyone raising like $0 to 10 million, anyone in that range, like we have multiple folks that are about to onboard. They're just waiting to close on their first deal before they feel comfortable signing up and then starting to reach out to investors and try to close out on funds. We have people that are using like supporting multi-asset funds and they're just closing on capital before they decide to invest in any deals. And then we've had people that have brought on 10 plus residential properties and they have just a handful of investors for each of those. So I'd say anyone in that range is like our target customer right now. We've recently also started supporting people that are raising for fix and flips through promissory notes, realizing that like the deal room can really be used for a lot of different asset types within real estate and just tracking those deals, showcasing any sort of track record that you want to showcase for previous deals you've closed as well, and then automating out distributions applicable to a lot of different deal types. But
Yeah.
I'd say it's in the 0 to 10 million range.
Yeah. Interesting. That's good. That's good. Trying to think. Yeah, I don't think there's any other questions. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we jump into the life crafting side of things? I feel like we covered a lot of angles there.
Yeah, no, this is great. Great questions so far. Nothing I'd call out that you haven't asked already.
Cool. Excellent. Let's jump into the life crafting side of things then. So as I explained, and just as a refresher for the listeners here, I started doing this practice about a year ago or so, where I call it life crafting, where every Sunday I lay out 3 goals for myself for the week, and I create the action steps to be able to figure out what it is that I need to do to be able to achieve whatever that goal is. And I realized that I was guessing a lot of times with these action steps. So I thought, I'm talking to all of these amazing people on the show here. So why don't I just ask them what they do in these different situations? We like to ask what the highest ROI activity is that you do in your own life, and what are some of those steps that you take to be able to deploy that. So what comes to mind with your highest ROI activity in your own life?
Truly highest ROI in most people's lives is going to be sleep. You just probably won't feel it now. That's not what I'm doing enough of, but I think in general, sleep is very much how your body recharges in a lot of ways. I'd say what we do internally at home base, but even in my personal life, like we have certain targets that we're trying to hit within the quarter, within the week. And so we'll set up our goals, even as a company, we'll set up, hey, here are the goals we're trying to get to for this given week. Are the steps or any of the actions that we're taking this week set to hit those goals? And if you feel like you're getting distracted 2 days in a row and none of the things you did are trying to hit any of the goals that you set up, like maybe some reprioritize what you're working on. And so we just do a lot of little experiments that are all aimed at hitting some of the goals. So for example, like if we want to hit a certain revenue target, that means having more customer calls. How do you get more customer calls? We run a lot of different experiments, whether it's marketing, whether it's reaching out to folks, like just so many different things you can do. So it's really just reflecting and saying, is my day being spent trying to achieve the goals that I set for myself at the beginning of the week?
hmm What is it? What does it look like to set those goals for you guys? Like, this is one of the other common problems that a lot of people have, is to achieve this, and you want to set a goal that is just out of reach for you, so that you have to reach for it, but then you don't want to go too high where you can't reach for it, because then the opinion is, I shot too high there anyway, so I wasn't going to hit it. Then you have this self-deprecating feeling, emotion that kind of comes over you, and whether or not you keep doing this goal work, who knows? So I'm just curious how you go about establishing those near-term, mid-term, and long-term goals where, again, you're aiming high enough, but not too high where there's no way you're going to be able to hit it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say like for a professional standpoint, like for home base, we'll have a 3 month goal of what we think we want to hit, like on a revenue target side, operationally, like how much we're trying to expand. And then we'll map out, okay, to get to this certain revenue target, we need X amount of customers. And we'll get those like in month one, month two, month three, and breaking it out even further. And then within the given month, like what experiments are we running to hit those targets? And then reflecting on, okay, we ran this experiment. What was the outcome? Is it good or bad? Should we continue it? If not, kill it. Let's do another one.
Mhm.
And so, of course, like you put aspirational goals. I'd say this is an art versus like a science of you're going to be exact with this. Of course, sometimes it can be too high, sometimes they're too easy. I try to always be aspirational. I know that I'm probably going to be off mark. I'd say by pushing yourself, you achieve more than you would have thought you could have achieved in a very short period of time.
That
So,
makes
yeah, that's my philosophy at least.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And are you tracking all of these goals in any specific type of median, or is it just a document where it's these are the month goals, week goals, 3-month goals? Like, what does that look like from a documentation standpoint?
Yeah, so we have a spreadsheet that we run through every week, and first thing Monday morning, we'll have a goals meeting for what we want to get done for that week. And then we reflect on whether or not we hit those goals the following Monday. And then every 2 weeks, we have a sprint review. And so there we'll chat through, okay, what do we want to get push out from a product perspective? And we will review a bit of sales and a bit of marketing and what do we do in each of those domains? And then reflect. And then, do we need to reprioritize anything? Are we still happy with our roadmap? Should we move things around? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And I'm trying to think of the name of the book, something execution. Are you familiar with what WIG is, the wildly important goals and the whirlwinds and all of that, right? Where the whirlwinds is all the daily activities that can distract you from achieving whatever your WIG might be. I'm curious how you go about blocking off this. Are you like a time blocker, or is the team a time blocker where, you know, between this time and this time, we're focused on whatever the goals are? Or is it an in and out type thing where these ideas or these whirlwinds problems, the day to day stuff comes in from time to time and distracts, but then you guys are disciplined enough to be able to get it back on track? I'm just curious how you go about managing and navigating all that.
Yeah, I'd say it comes down to, at least for me personally, it comes back to reflecting on, okay, it's been a day, it's been 2 days. Were the actions that I took today in pursuit of the goals that we set for this week and for the month?
Hmm.
If not, how can I reprioritize my calendar tomorrow to make time for the goals that we set for ourselves? Because ultimately, you set those goals for a given reason or purpose. From a team standpoint, we probably reflect on that like at the end of the week of, hey, okay, how's everyone else doing on their goals? Did we hit them or not? And if not, what happened? What
Hmm.
made you not hit those goals? And so then we'll chat about it, reflect. Maybe we need to reprioritize. Maybe we need to put less on the plate for certain people on the team just based on like their workload. So
Yeah, yeah, love it, love it. Domingo, we've covered a lot of different topics here. This has been a great episode. I appreciate it. If people want to learn more about you or home base, what would be the best way to reach out and get in touch?
yeah, you could reach out to me personally just on LinkedIn. So I think it's just Domingo Valadez with a V and a Z at the end. And to learn more about Homebase, it's homebasecre.com. I'm sure you'll link both in the show notes, but
Mhm.
both of those, if you want to reach out to me, I try to be very active on LinkedIn. So I get back to people pretty quickly.
Excellent. Domingo, thanks for the time today. This is fantastic.
No, thanks so much, Matt. This is so much fun. I appreciate you having me on.
A big thank you to Domingo Valdez for sharing his journey from Google to launching Homebase and highlighting the future of investor management in real estate. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us bring more amazing content to you. Stay innovative, keep investing, and until next time, remember the right tools can transform your approach to real estate.